Hi, I'm Jeanne Fiorini. Thanks for being here at the Tarot Tips. Today's video is going to be about how are they similar, how are they different. This is a great little exercise to play if you have just a few minutes and you want to get out your cards. It's a good way to fine-tune. As in the previous video, the idea was about paying attention to the nuances of cards and how they change depending on what other cards are around it, as well as the context of the question. Whereas the previous video was about the context of the question, this is going to be kind of compare and contrast two cards when they come up together. It's an interesting kind of mind game to play, but it really does help you to get a very deep and rich connection with your cards in the various ways they can come up to say slightly different things depending on what other cards decide to come out on the table. So let's take a look at a couple examples and we'll play around with this idea. The first example we're going to talk about is from an actual reading. Someone is thinking about retiring, leaving a job that they've had in some form or another for the past 30 years. And many times when people are faced with this choice and this point in their life, there's a lot of trepidation about how to handle the money as well as what they're going to do with themselves. So the question that this person asked was, what can help me make the best decisions for me over the next year as I plan my retirement? And she pulls 8 of Pentacles and the Wheel card. So this reading happened in a group, and it gave us a great opportunity to talk about this idea about how are they similar, how are they different? Because in some ways they look like two incongruous cards, and many of the people in the group were a little stumped about how they could be working together. So let's see, how are they different? Let's talk about that aspect first. So we have a Pentacle card, a card of the earthly material plane, of practical matters, of what we can do something about. How are we going to use our resources? All of this is very pragmatic. It's very material world oriented. What we see in the Wheel card is the opposite, apparently. When I talk about the Wheel card in tarot class, I always make the comment about that there are many cards in the tarot that we might look out our window and see that picture. We might look out our window and see somebody working at a bench. You know, we might look out our window and see something that looks like 2 of Swords. But we're not going to look out our window and see something that looks like the Wheel of Fortune. If we do, we're in a very magical place. So the Wheel of Fortune is not grounded, not practical, not pragmatic, really not knowable. It's more a picture of the cosmic laws that underlie our experience. You know, that's a very lofty kind of idea, a very kind of enigmatic idea. Whereas the 8 of Pentacles is very grounded, and this person has some measure of control. Wheel of Fortune is very much, okay, we're just along for the ride here. It's far from grounded, and we have really no control at all. We don't have control over the aging process. We don't have control over the seasons. We don't have control over the way cycles and nature just go about their business. And we have to roll with those changes. So let's see if there's anything else off the top of my head. How are they different? Well, we have a minor arcana and a major arcana, which doesn't always mean that cards give a different message, but we could throw that in there too. Okay, how are they similar? Each of these cards is connected to the force of change. The 8 of Pentacles, well, 8s, think about what the number 8 does. It moves. 8s are ruled by Uranus. 8s are about whether we create change or have to roll with the flow of change. So there's movement and change in both of these cards. Obviously, the wheel is about cycles shifting, seasons changing, patterns in life moving from one thing that we know to another thing that we don't know. So the idea of change and movement is here, but there's also an undertone here of flexibility. That the Eight of Pentacles says, I can take what I have built and rearrange it in a way that's going to work for me. And the message of the wheel really is, okay, you can't dig in your heels here. You've got to roll with things as they're coming. You have to be flexible. You have to, you can't say no to the force of the wheel, to the force of change. Change is everywhere. So there's a willingness to reinvent oneself, we could say, that is a common theme with both of these cards. And what we came up with as advice for the person, remembering the question, how can she make the best choices for herself, is to wait and see how things unfold over the next year and have confidence that she's got the resources and the capability to manage those resources, that she can reinvent, recreate her life as things change. So there's a flexibility, a capability, a little bit of confidence in there in the face of the unknown. Let's use another example about how are they similar, how are they different. Let's take a look at the High Priestess and the Fool card. Let's see, how are they different? So in this case, we have two major arcana cards. We have two early in the series, card 0 and card 2, really primal kinds of archetypal energies here. But how are they different? The High Priestess is very comfortable staying put. The Fool has the impulse to move. The High Priestess is patient and doesn't really communicate or take any action. The Fool is all about being spontaneous and taking risks, taking the leap, literally, not literally, figuratively. Just visually, these two cards have a different energy, whereas the High Priestess is withdrawn. We see the black and the white and the blue colors in most High Priestess cards, those receding, receptive, watery kinds of colors. With the Fool, we see this expansive, this yellow, this gold, this more dynamic feeling. So we have receptive and dynamic here. How might they be similar? They both are motivated from the inner plane, we could say. The High Priestess is all about intuitive knowing. She's all about receiving and containing wisdom and information and knowledge. She's not about acting on it, but she's all about tuning in internally for her wisdom. The Fool also is driven by internal mechanisms. The Fool doesn't pay attention to what other people are doing. The Fool is responding to his own imperatives. They both have a certain sense of spirituality. I think it's a little bit more obvious than the High Priestess that she is, she looks very nun-like or very spiritually peaceful. The Fool, I lost my train of thought there. I got kind of immersed in that High Priestess. The Fool
also is spiritually oriented in the fact that I think of this card as the card that's closest to source, the card that's closest to our who we were before we had a name sort of idea. What's our essential being? So both of these cards are tapped into that aspect of who we are. So you can see there's a lot of not conclusions, but observations we can come to by playing this little game of how are they similar, how are they different. It's also great fodder for whatever future readings you might do, to really notice the subtleties in the card. You might notice things that you had never seen before. Like, for instance, I'm noticing here how his outfit or his dress and her background here are very similar. You can draw your own conclusions here about how are they similar, how are they different. This is something that can help you understand your tarot deck better and also enrich your readings as you move forward. I hope that's a helpful idea. I will see you next time.